And we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charlotte Black Film Festival's roundtable discussion on eavesdropping on the elders. Welcome to everyone. We want to, if you're watching on Facebook Live, if you write on the comments section, we will be open to any questions because we have a wonderful panel of elders. We have folks who are the filmmakers. We have the inspiration for the film. And we have some folks who are the elder and not so elder in Charlotte, but still have so much wisdom because there's a lot of history and knowledge that probably even some folks who are listening and watching don't realize that we can get clued in on. So to start, I want to introduce our panel. First, my name is Mary C. Curtis. I'm based in Charlotte right now. I'm a journalist and I cover the intersection of politics, culture, and race. I write a column for CQ Roll Call out of Washington, and I host their Equal Time podcast, which looks at politics and policy through a social justice lens. You can also catch me on NPR WFAE and a variety of outlets. And I'm so honored to introduce our panel. So if you could speak a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and then also, since we're talking about our elders, what is someone who has given you some wisdom? And what is that bit of wisdom you can share with the audience? I want to start off with, the inspiration and writer for Eavesdropping on the Elders, Jim Klingman, who has joined us wonderfully, and Sylvia, and their daughter Kaya was the director. I hope all of you have seen the movie. If you have not, please do it. It's about 20 minutes long. And I tell you, it is very moving and a beautiful film. And it probably have some historical folks in there that even you might not have known about. So Jim, you were talking to us about writing it and your reaction to the film as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that and about your own background as someone who has written much about economic empowerment?
Well, I've written about it for about 30 years, and I've been very active in initiatives and movements to bring about solutions. And I say that because too often we just talk about the problem. And I was always inclined to not only write about solutions, but to get involved. And
Hey, what is your patient? Yeah, my daughter is in there. How old is your daughter? She's 5. Just come back around.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on writing the film, what you wanted to accomplish, and what you thought about when your daughter picked up the mantle and had this wonderful finished product?
well, I was very proud that she did that. But my initial thoughts were to highlight my hero when it comes to economic empowerment, and that's Marcus Garvey. And everything he did, many people still don't know the scope of his work in terms of entrepreneurship and self-help. And it grew from there that he kind of was the lead character, and the other characters I included later on in the writing.
Wonderful. Miss Sylvia, would you want to chime in? Because you're saying that you are a proud parent as well.
Oh yeah, because Kaya actually takes after her dad with the gift of writing, which as he expressed earlier, that he's an author of many books, and the main focus have been on empowerment in the African American community economically. And so it's just nice to see her sort of take the torch and do some of the same things that he's doing creatively on paper and also in film because of her acting ability and producing ability. So yeah, definitely very, very, very proud of her for her accomplishments and the work that the finished product that she and CJ and the others were able to put on film on the video. So that was amazing to see.
Wonderful. And if folks, when they see the film, you can have a little guessing game if you can figure out who all the historical figures are.
Yes.
Now, CJ, you worked on the film. Could you want to take it from there and tell us a little bit about how it came together?
Yes, so I was tasked with taking Mr. Klingman's amazing, phenomenal writing and adapting that into a script that will be digestible for your everyday audience. That's not an easy task. He's a very intelligent man and a phenomenal writer. So breaking down that grand vision into this film piece. It was a fun task. Me and Kaya, we did this together. Originally, it was a birthday gift to him, and then ended up turning into something that served a much greater purpose and message within this film that other people could latch on to.
Thank you. That's 75th birthday, I believe, wasn't it? Yes.
75th birthday. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now we have some folks here. Now, did you have a particular elder, CJ Sykes, that you related to?
Within the film?
Or in your life?
Within the film, it would have to be Marcus Garvey. Within my life, that would have to be Mr. Klingman, who takes so much from Mr. Garvey. I'm sure you guys are very aware of Mr. Klingman, but once you really get to sit down and talk to him and hear about his story and the things he's done and the people whose lives he's impacted, you can't help but to be inspired by him.
Great, thank you. Now I have to turn to our own Fergie, Mr. James Ferguson, who, if you've been in the Charlotte community, you know that he is a part of history. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about who maybe was your inspiration?
Sure, thank you, Mary. I'm glad to be here. And when you get to be my age, when you say I'm glad to be here, you really mean it. I've had the pleasure of being a part of the Charlotte community since 1967, when I came here to practice law, which is what I still do. And I was able to join Julius Chambers, who is one of the great heroes of Charlotte and North Carolina and the United States itself. So we started North Carolina's first racially integrated law firm back in 1968. He and I joined with two white lawyers who were of like mind with us in trying to do something to advance the civil rights movement. So just in terms of who I am, let me just tell you, for those who think they're eagles, I know Smudgy is one. I happen to be the oldest eagle on this call. Now, I had the pleasure of going to North Carolina Central, and like the gentleman who spoke first, I also got to know Maynard Jackson, who remained a friend of mine throughout his life. So I graduated around 1967, I think it was. It's been so long ago, I forget sometimes. And then eventually went to Columbia Law School and came to Charlotte. And I've had the honor and pleasure of working with Chambers throughout his life until he left us a few years ago and is now practicing law in that great sky above us. But he was a pioneer, not just in Charlotte and North Carolina, but nationally. He headed up the NAACP Legal Defense Fund for a number of years in his career. And for my fellow Eagles, I will say he, an Eagle himself, had the honor and distinction of coming back to North Carolina Central as chancellor of North Carolina Central. He had a great record there. So I owe homage to him and many, many others who are my elders. And I've had the honor and pleasure of working in the vineyard of racial justice for the past 50 plus years, and we're still there.
That's incredible. I knew Mr. Chambers a bit. I covered the homegoing at Friendship, where so many people, including the current head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Sherilyn Ifill, came and told me how he mentored her as a young lawyer. So now we have Miss Ruth Perez with us, who, thank you for coming in, who is an activist and achiever in this community herself. So if she could unmute and tell us a little bit about her experience and what she is doing in Charlotte, and then also who may have been the elder who inspired her with a particular life lesson that she can share.
Thank you. I am glad and very humbled to be in this phenomenal panel. I know a few faces down there. I am a activist, a community advocate, and I am doing both roles in Charlotte and in Union County now. I'm expanding myself. Right now, I am working a lot with a nonprofit called Common Heart, helping establish a lot of our homeless people, a lot of our low income, a lot of our needy families to get a pathway on a program called Getting Ahead in this difficult world. And it's a 17 weeks program where we give them $25 for every session to motivate them so they can learn topics and things, how to get better and get by in life. They don't need to get stuck with their stories on a shelter home or out in the woods. I was invited, I think last Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm learning by hearing y'all. I'm learning by hearing the stories. And I think the girl in that story really, really impacted my heart. I kind of identify myself with it. What else?
Well, that's something
Elder?
I think. Yeah, an elder. But I mean, you said that she inspired you. Sometimes a younger person can inspire you, right?
That's what I was gonna say. I don't think she's an elder, but she,
Yeah.
it was that type of film where you get to see, yes, you feel good and you feel impressed by elders, but I mean, that particular heart that she faces or she goes through and characterized in that film makes you see yourself in a lot of situations.
Yes.
And that's what captured me. I am a grandma of 3, so I am a young, I call myself a senior. I'm gonna call myself, once I become a senior, I'm not gonna call my senior, I'm gonna call myself a senior age.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's fitting that you go from Charlotte to Union County because you are on the road with us and you still found time to come and join us. And I think you made a good point that an elder is not a matter of age, but of wisdom. So I'd like to turn it to Tom Hanchett. If you could unmute, give us a little bit, as someone who was at the Levine Museum of the New South, your work was history and all of these stories that we may not know about. Maybe there's a lesson that you can tell all of our newcomers that is something they may not know about Charlotte after you introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Tom Hanchett, and I retired from Levine Museum of the New South about 5 years ago. And I've got a website with lots of different kinds of history on it, www.historysouth.org, including a whole lot of recent stuff in the historic West End, a walking tour near Johnson C. Smith, information on the Oaklawn Park African-American neighborhood that was built in the 1950s, our newest historic district here. So this is a community where a lot of history is made every day, and that is the the thing as a historian that I bring to all of us is that the folks who are national figures are supported and their work is carried forward always by folks at the local level. And people who are older than me are elders, but I'm also always looking for young elders, because you don't get to be an old elder without being a young change agent. And with that in mind, I will suggest, if folks can, get down to Levine Museum of the New South. At the recreated lunch counter, there are videos with some of the early civil rights leaders, including Franklin McCain, who was one of the original 4 Greensboro sit-in folks, spent almost all of his life in Charlotte. And at this little short video talks about students needing to become activists. And at the very end, he said something which I'd never heard before. He said, "Don't ask permission. They will never give you permission to start a revolution. And so take action and don't wait."
Thank you. He was certainly someone I was lucky to get to know. And he also said a little anecdote. He told me that, you know, when they were sitting at the lunch counter and an older white woman came up and leaned down, and he thought she might say something mean or nasty. And she said, "You boys should have done this a long time ago." Just to let you know that sometimes you have allies where you may least expect it. Smudgy Mitchell, yeah, you know, elected official, entrepreneur, been in Charlotte Central alumni.
There you go, Mary. That's
Yeah,
right.
everything. You went there with a good friend of mine, Walisa Bennett. But
Yes, that's right.
why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and your connection to Charlotte and a lesson you might have learned?
Okay, and I'm gonna be very brief, Mary, because I'm anxious to get to the panel. So number one, let me first pay respect to those Eagles who paved the way for me. That means a lot to me. Secondly, let me thank the citizens who allowed me to serve 20 years on the Charlotte City Council, a Charlotte native, a proud graduate of West Charlotte Senior High School. And my local elder was Ron Leeper. Mr. Leeper both was my mentor politically as well as in the business community. That's why I feel so fortunate now to be CEO of RJ Leeper Construction Company. And on the national level, it was the late Maynard Jackson. I saw Maynard at a Black Enterprise Summit in 1998. His speech was the 3 Bs, the books, the ballot, and the bucks. And I've always prided myself when I was an elected official serving the community. I wanted to be Maynard Jackson light. So my passion was economic development. My passion was about Black businesses. And then, of course, I would create a Black history program for students, the middle schools that were feeding into West Charlotte. Many of you all know I married way up, and my wife is only the 3rd Black female to ever go into space. And so collectively, we try to educate and inform more Black female young ladies to go into STEM. And so I'm excited about the panel. Thank you so much for the Charlotte Black Film Fest for allowing me to participate.
Well, thank all of you. And I do just, oh, yes. Sorry, Smudgy.
One more if I may.
Yeah.
So what was to me so profound in the movie was intelligent rules the world, ignorant carries the burden. My gracious, that was powerful.
Very wise. I want to do a shout out to the film too, because it included my heroine, which is Ida B. Wells, from the late 19th, early 20th century, journalist, abolitionist. She wrote columns about lynching. I'm a columnist, of course. She was attacked, her presses in Memphis. She barely got out alive. She was a suffragette when she went 1913 in Washington to march in the suffragette parade, and they wanted Black women to march at the back. She would not stand for that. I love her resilience. And personally, my parents, Evelyn and Thomas Curtis of Baltimore, they have deceased, but they have 5 children they raised and sent to schools, and my oldest brother was a judge. But I learned a lesson. My oldest 3 siblings were involved in the civil rights movement, and they used to meet in our home. That wasn't that was kind of unusual in Baltimore at that time for integrated groups to meet. And, you know, my father said, these folks are brave, these kids are brave. and he was very supportive. And I might have been a toddler at the time, but I remember the freedom songs and all of that. And it really made me want to be an observer of life and news, which is why I'm a journalist. So I want to ask all of you something that brings us into the present. The importance of this movie was Black history and knowing these figures that we need to get lessons from them. But a big debate is going on now about how we teach about race and racism and how African Americans and their history was so integral to American history. And many people saying, if it makes you uncomfortable, maybe we ought not to bring it up with kids. And others saying, well, of course we need to know the truth. And Black children in particular need to know what their history was in forming this country. So I'd like to ask a little bit of each of you to weigh in on the fact of this film was so important for what it brought out. What do we lose if we don't get stories like this out to our even youngest school children? CJ.
We risk losing everything. We risk hitting the reset button and starting over every time if we don't pass down messages that the elders fought so hard to present to us. If that history is buried, we are forced to start over again and again, becoming even further behind than where we've been placed. So it's important to pass those messages down in a way that people can understand them, not just forcing it in people, but presenting it in a way where people can really grasp it and are able to share it.
Thank you. Fergie, it looks like you had a thought.
Well, I have many thoughts when you talk about history and its importance to people. And when I hear people now saying somehow or another you ought to either not discuss history or change it, then I realize even more how important history is. For myself, I have delved more lately into not just the history of our people in the United States and America, but I've looked at the slave trade itself. And the more I look at it, I've come to understand more clearly now than ever before that the transatlantic slave trade, which was when our foreparents were first brought from Africa to the Americas, really tells us a lot about the problems that we're facing now, because that was the beginning of what W.E.B. Du Bois called reputational damage. The reputational damage started when the white slave traders tried to justify and explain their involvement in slavery, saying that we're doing the slaves a favor by enslaving them. They're better off enslaved where we take them than they are free people in Africa. And nothing could be further than the truth. But that reputational wound has stayed with us even until today. And you think about it, the biggest problem we have is the reputational wound. And every program in the world won't erase that until we as a people rise up and take control of our own history as well as control of our own future.
Well, I see, Tom, you've unmuted. Do you have a thought?
Well, I'm a historian, so I better. I've written a book about how Charlotte got segregated. It's called Sorting Out the New South City. And there's a new edition of it out. And it makes the point that it's not just one moment when things changed. There are decisions that layer on top of each other and layer on top of each other. And that none of those decisions are ours because the people that made them are dead, but we're now in charge of the game, us, our generation. And we can't avoid that. And knowing the history helps us understand what direction we're already going, and then we can change the direction. Amanda Gorman, the great poet who spoke at the inauguration, said, history is the past we step into. And to understand what path you are stepping into, You need to understand that past if you want to change the path for the better.
Yes, I think about the Tulsa 100th anniversary of the race massacre and how that destroyed generational Black wealth, businesses, homes, people, and so many did not know about it. I think about I'm sitting in Myers Park where I could not have lived because there were restricted covenants that kept me from there. I've looked at them. It says you could only be in the neighborhood if you were Black, if you were there to scrub a toilet. And of course, then you couldn't build that generational wealth. And so, as you said, Tom, build. And our former mayor and cabinet secretary, Anthony Fox, has talked about waking up one day and not being able to go to the store because they had built 3 highways in his neighborhood and how that destroyed Black neighborhoods. Smudgy, you had some thought.
And I'm gonna be very brief because I think the panel's done a great job. I just want to follow something Tony Ferguson said, and the movie said it best too. We need to free shackles from our minds. And I do think we have to take it upon ourselves to teach the history. We know the school system has failed us. And so as leaders, community leaders, as elders, I think that fall on our responsibility, whether it's through many of our nonprofit organizations or just leadership groups. So I think the responsibility has to be on us.
Mm-hmm. And Ruth Perez, I know that you have done some incredible work in the Hispanic communities, and that is another area of so much history. I used to live in Arizona, and I know Texas has been have so many political fights right now, and a lot of that has to do with arguments over history and how it's taught and who took part in it. You're muted.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very impactful what I see every single day, not only with my Latino community, but with the entire community. There's a broken bridge between our communities, our government, our cities, and there's not enough voices that needs to be heard. Some of our people feel like they can't be heard because they're afraid of getting to a seat or getting to a table so they can question things.
And I think we lost Ruth for a bit there in the car. Unmute. They remuted you.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm a multitasker. I just finished doing another training. I'm on my way to pick up my daughter-in-law from work. So I'm always on the road doing things. But yeah, once I'm outside and see the real needs of our community, there's a story behind everyone. You know, it's very impactful.
Yeah. See, that's another quality of our communities. We have many jobs and we do them all at the same time. Mr. Klingman, did you want to comment? If you could unmute. If you can unmute, we can't hear you. Okay, we can't hear you right now. Okay, if you thank you, Sylvia. Yes, Jim, we can hear you now.
Right. What was the question?
It was that nowadays there is a movement to damp down how we teach our history in schools because some of it, particularly when it comes to the legacy of race and racism, might make some people uncomfortable. So stories like Tulsa and so forth, they want to control how we teach it to our young people. So we were talking about what is lost when we lose those voices and that history.
Well, we lose a part of who we are, the essence of who we are as a people. The Tulsa riot has a significance for me because I taught it in my classes at the university some 15 years ago. And I met some of the survivors in 2007 when I was out there speaking about the incident, the tragedy. And it was astounding to know that so many people didn't know about it for so long. And I found it very interesting over the past decade or so that when people would come on CNN and say, oh, this is the worst shooting in American history. They said that about Virginia Tech. They said about
Sandy Hook.
the one in Florida. I even called them and told them that while those were very tragic, they weren't the largest. And I constantly told them about Tulsa. So to blank that out, really, can you imagine what that did to the families of those people who were lost? So it really blacked out, pardon the pun, the history of part of our people. And that's what will be lost if we don't teach our entire history, not just part of it. I was taught things in school that are not true. Now I know that. But I think it's very important to teach everything that happened
Yeah.
and leave it up to the individuals to mix it together, to do what they should do, and that's to, like they used to say, eat the fish and spit out the bones.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Thank you.
And it wasn't that long ago. When I saw the 107-year-old woman testifying, who was a survivor from when she was 7, and said she dreams about it every night, to realize there is a woman from Tulsa who in 100 years has not gotten a good night's sleep.
Right.
So it's the human cost as well.
And let me share one point. John Sibley Butler, in his book, he wrote a lot about Tulsa. And he had a quote in his book that says, it was from the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Tulsa. And it said the very next day in the paper, at this moment, we are exploring ways to give reparations to those people's family. And it never, ever happened.
Yeah.
Tribute to Charles Ogletree, who took it to the Supreme Court as well. We
Definitely.
need to remember him as well.
Yes, Tree was, when I was an Neiman Fellow at Harvard, and he brought up my professor, and he brought up John Hope Franklin, whose family actually lost their peace. So I'm going to wrap it up. People have been great, but I do have a question from Facebook that is to the elders. What is the legacy you would like to leave? And how do you want to be remembered? And let's start with CJ.
A legacy I would like to leave. I want to be known as a storyteller who told stories worth telling. I don't want my career as a filmmaker to be limited to just trying to write things that are exciting or that are catchy or that are trendy. I want to write impactful pieces that resonate with an audience.
Yeah. And I know you have to get off the call. We are wrapping up as after everyone speaks, but did you have some final thoughts? Well, I want to acknowledge the director, Robinson Bill, who had a family emergency, but he was on the call for a bit. But any thoughts you want to leave us with on anything of what you got from the film, your experience, what your next plans are? Just CJ, some final thoughts.
Okay. Well, first of all, it is beyond an honor to even be recognized for this film. To be a part of this festival is truly, truly, truly an honor. And I thank everyone who was involved. This film, I've had a lot of actors who are part of the piece who have done huge, huge projects say that this was the most important thing that they've done. The actor who played Marcus Garvey, Mac Wells, phenomenal actor, one of my great friends, said that he doesn't think he'll do anything more important than playing Marcus Garvey. And that means everything, to know that because Mr. Klingman decided to sit down and write this piece, an actor felt like he's done his most fulfilling role already in his career. And I just hope that other people walk away with those same kinds of feelings, that man, this is our history. This is important. This is something that isn't dead and in the past. This is something that we can take forward and present to more people. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I hope Mr. Klingman's accepting his flowers. So Ruth, do you want to answer our viewers' question on what is the legacy you would like to leave and how do you want to be remembered?
That's a deep question.
Yes, we've got some deep viewers.
That is, and it's very important because I've always told my boys, I don't have any daughters, and I never had any sisters. And it's amazing how sometimes our actions can mark and leave a footprint on someone's soul. Whatever we do right now, my boys might not be able to transcend and do it, but my legacy will reach out to my grandkids, my great-grandkids, and also to my beautiful community. Because I know if I'm doing right and they're seeing me as a role model, I want to make sure that I just don't want to do it just for fun or just to do it. I want to make sure that it implants them in their heart so they can follow those steps. You know, I was sharing with someone last week, what are we gonna do when Alma Adams is no longer with us? Who's gonna take her shoes? Who's gonna be that person that will stand up like she done? I haven't found anyone else. So people coming after her generation better start learning and, equipping themselves and navigating and submerging into all those good things that good role models out there are doing so we can follow their steps.
Great. And I like the point of you talk. I'm the mother of a son, you're the mother of sons, and sometimes you do things and you don't know how it's going to affect people, the little things you do every day, and they'll take a lesson from that. So that's very wise. So Smudgy, you are unmuted. It seems like you are ready to tell us what your thoughts are on legacy and being remembered, and any final thoughts.
I would like to be remembered as a bridge builder, someone who is passionate about taking the past and preparing the future. I want to continue to spend my time preparing the next level of leadership and make sure we can prepare the next African-American business leaders. And so even I had the opportunity to serve on city council. One thing I told someone, I love the city more than I love myself. And we got to have people who want to serve this community, but a passion that is not about them, but it's about the greater cause.
The greater cause. I love that. You write that down. Tom.
There we go. All right. Folks are thinking about how to grow elders, and thank you all for the things that you're thinking in that way. Franklin McCain, the sit-in leader, I saw him give many talks in which he encouraged young people. And because he gave so many talks, he was very creative in that. One of the things that I noticed was that he listened. He always had time after a talk, even it was the umpteenth talk of Black History Month, doggone it. And he would stand there and he would talk with people. He would hang out, he would listen. And so that listening is very important. I heard him do an amazing little trick. I don't know if it's a trick, but one time when he was talking to a whole group of high school students, he said, "I'm not here to talk to you. I'm here to talk to one of you who's ready to listen, who's ready to take the lead." And that's the talk he gave. Well, of course, everybody was on the edge of their seat. And so the extent that we can encourage the next set of leaders by just raw listening or by that kind of creativity, that's where it's at.
Great. Fergie, I know you have something to tell us.
Well, Mary, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about how I want to be remembered, but I do try to spend as much time as I can making a difference
Okay.
in how we all are
That's
remembered.
good.
And I go back to something I mentioned earlier because I think we still feel the sting of the reputational racial wounds that were inflicted from the beginning of the slave trade. And I take the beginning of the slave trade because that, to my understanding, was the beginning of white racism as we know it. And what I want to do, if I had to choose among the many things that challenge us all, then I would choose to first reveal the wound, because I think people have to understand that that wound is there and that we live with it every day and that it affects everything we do in the world today. When I say we, I'm talking about everybody, because not only African Americans and not only descendants of Africa, but everybody feels the sting of that wound today. So first, I want to do my part in revealing the wound. And secondly, I want to do all I can until I breathe my last breath to heal that wound. Because until we heal that wound, we will continue to face many of the problems we face right now, day to day.
Great. I'll give brief remarks before I, of course, end with Mr. Klingman, who is the inspiration for this. But I agree with many folks here. I try to mentor a lot. I realize that, I'm not being morbid, but I've lived more years on this earth than I will. And if you don't leave folks behind that are carrying on that message, I teach programs with the Op-Ed Project all over the country and the world. I just did one yesterday for some health leaders. We teach it called Right to Change the World. And the mission is to get voices out there of the people who are underrepresented on our op-ed pages and in the public discourse. I also mentor a lot of people personally, young journalists, particularly women of color, and have written recommendations so they can get the fellowships at Harvard that I've gotten or at Stanford, and they are doing great work. So many of them are entrepreneurial. If they don't have something there, they'll start it themselves. I'm also on scholarship committees because, of course, that's what you do. I'm a mother, so you want to leave a legacy in someone who will carry that on. So I think that is the point. I'm more with Fergie. How do you make a difference now so that when you leave this earth, there are so many people carrying on your work? So Mr. Klingman, you have left so many books. You have written this film. You are in the film. You're an inspiration. So if you could give us any thoughts that you want to leave us with about legacy.
I'm now, despite my condition, working on my fourth inspirational book. And in this book, I want to leave a very important message my life, my wife's life, and my daughter's life took a drastic turn when I came down with ALS. And over the last 7 years or so, I've come to know that just because you're helpless does not mean that you are useless, that we all have something we can offer, and God can use us for His purpose to leave legacies for others to follow. So I am consoled by that thought as far as how I leave here. I'm also consoled by the thought that the doctors said fatal, but I say, and God says, when it's final. So keep that in mind, all of you, and let's continue to work to leave a proud legacy here for CJ's group and those who come after him. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. Miss Sylvia, do you have anything to add?
No, he said it all.
Come on.
Well, I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers who have been eavesdropping on our elders. I've learned so much, and we've come to the point that we know that elders, it's no number, it's wisdom. And I want to thank again Tom Hanchett, Smudgy James, Smudgy Mitchell, CJ Sykes, Fergie, James Ferguson, the beautiful Ruth Perez, and the opportunity from the Charlotte Film Festival to see this incredible film. CJ, Mr. Klingman, Kaya, tell her we are just in awe of her talent. And I hope all of you heard these lessons that you have to make a difference today in your communities, whether it's Charlotte or the world community or wherever you are. So I am Mary C. Curtis. Follow me on Twitter at mcurtisnz3 or look me up, maryccurtis.com if you want to, follow my podcast, Equal Time with Mary C. Curtis, because the conversation continues. My life has changed being in your presence, Mr. Klingman. So I've been eavesdropping. So thank you all. And I think, Mr. Nichols, that we've been on for a while, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care of my ego.
Thank you, Mary. Great job. Great job. Wow.
Did you like that?
Yes, that was so good. I knew you was the one. Get Mary, get Mary.
Well, I thought everybody was where they were really on their game, and having Mr. Klingman there was an inspiration to everyone. We all upped our game. So
Yes.
I want to thank you for the opportunity. And it was a really nice film. So I'm hoping people watch that. Hey, Fergie, thank you. It's good to see you again in a COVID year. We're coming out of the cocoon. Yeah, you're muted.
Yes.
Yeah. So Tommy, I think that's it. I'm gonna take off. I have to write a podcast script.
I made you host, so if you leave off, then we're out. So just leave off.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also working on a book with a Hollywood to be continued, and I have a book that's coming out covering politics in the age of Trump. I have a chapter in it, so Maybe I'll come back and do something else for you.
That'd be great. That would be awesome. Let's talk about it.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, take care.